Hey everybody, here's the shirt of the day. What part of this don't you understand? Hey, I'm a master machinist and I lost track a quarter of the way through it. It's one of those cases, use it or lose it. Well, welcome ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to do a quick video and because of a couple of comments I had on another video I had about not getting scammed. You can check it out. It's one of my videos on how you don't get scammed and know what to look for on a guitar so you don't buy a fake and think it's real and blah, blah, blah. Somebody left me a comment that was very interesting. A lot of us have information that we take for granted everyone knows, and some of it everyone does know, and some of it, it turns on a light sometimes. So I thought I would just share some of that with you. The comment was, I showed different ways you can tell right away when something's a fake, and a person commented and said, oh yeah, and when it says Epiphone by Gibson, that's another giveaway. Well, I don't think he quite understood what that means during that era when they were doing that. So I wanted to explain a couple things. And I'll do the Gibson one first. I'm going to talk about Gibson and Martin, along with Sigma and Epiphone. Gibson, a lot of you may have seen like Les Pauls or acoustics, and it'll have Gibson up in the truss rod cover. It'll say Gibson, but it's an Epiphone guitar. People wonder, why did they do that? Well, I'll tell you, which you may or may not know. Some of this information you're going to say, Bob, everybody knows that stuff. What are you doing? But I'm going to say it anyways. There was another thing. One comment said, stop talking. Hey, I told you I'm mostly Italian, so even if I did stop talking, my hands are going 1,000 miles an hour, so that won't solve anything. Back to the story. Gibson built 2 factories in China at one time. It was a Gibson factory and an Epiphone factory. There was 2 factories. One was a Gibson, one was an Epiphone. And they were making Epiphone guitars in that Gibson factory. And you can spot one if you have it, if you have one of those. If you have an Epiphone and the serial number begins with a G, a capital G, the letter G, that means it was made in the Gibson plant in China. That's what that G signifies. When there's no letter, it was made in the Epiphone plant in China. And it'll just say made in China. But that's how it got to be Epiphone by Gibson. It really was. It was 2 different factories making the Epiphone guitars over there. And don't misunderstand the luthiers over there. They just weren't all people they hired from over there to do the work. No, Gibson sent over their luthiers to train the staff and the crew that was working on guitars. These were all well-trained people. Gibson no longer has that plant going, and I believe some of the other operators are running it now, making a lot of these guitars you see coming in, especially from the small vendors. But that's a story for another day. But that's the story with Epiphone by Gibson. So I hope that clears that up. And it might help you when you're looking at one of those guitars someday. You might say, oh, hey, it was made in the Gibson plant, so check it out. The other thing I want to talk about is Martin. As I mentioned before, Martin is an institution, great guitars. They've been in business forever. You can't argue. They always made a great product, and they continue to try and do that. But like all companies, whether it's automotive, food, entertainment, it can be any business. Sometimes businesses fall asleep and others catch up. It's like the rabbit and the tortoise and the hare. Other companies will catch up and some of them pass them. So, and like I mentioned earlier in one of my other videos, the other thing that Martin did was let the fox in the hen house when they let the Japanese come in for a tour. They always have tours they give you down there in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. That's where the Martin factory is. And they came in with, at that time, they were taking pictures of everything. You'd see Japanese people in Niagara Falls or in a thrift store. You'd see them anywhere, and they were taking pictures everywhere. It was just common to see that. Well, they did that in the Martin factory, and they even ended up taking pictures of the blueprints. So they went back and started Sigma guitars and started producing them. And Martin said, no way, we're not having this. They were just too close. And the company told them, hey, okay, what are you going to do? Sue us? We're in Japan. This is our company. So Martin did the smart thing and put them under their umbrella. Martin authorized them to make those guitars. Now, as far as I know, you may correct me, as far as I know, during that era when Sigma was in Japan making guitars, I never saw an all solid wood Sigma. Always a solid top, laminated back and sides. They were nice guitars, very good, and they were just like a Martin, very clones, except they were laminated back and sides, where the Martins were always all solid. Like I said, I've never seen an all solid, but I'm sure there was from that period now. I'm talking about that period. Okay, so time goes by, and the Japanese, Sigma, just stops making it. They're all done with the business. They don't want to make them anymore, so they stop. That was the end of it, and now Martin has their production in Mexico for their, still under Martin. They don't call it another name. It's still Martin guitars, but it's made in Mexico. And they're more affordable, and they use HPL. That's their new go-to. HPL, in case you don't know, is high pressure laminate. It's basically sawdust super compressed under high pressure, and it forms a laminate. It's not wood, but it's kind of wood. So it's just a fancy name for cutting costs. And but some people like them, and they sound pretty good to some people. It's not for me, but yeah. So anyways, that's what Martin does now. Well, what happened was with Sigma, Martin is sold worldwide, and they had, when I say they sold worldwide, in Europe, any Martin guitar, and there's going to be problems. There's going to be bridge lifts. There's going to be flaws, binding. Things go wrong. They just get damaged, whatever the case may be. When that happens, they had an authorized dealer over there, an authorized factory that took care of all their repair work. It was called AMI in Germany. Very, very good company. And Martin trusted them to the max. They were their go-to, and that's all they used. So everything went to AMI to have fixed. So now, Martin's all done with Sigma, and AMI wants to buy it. So they buy that from Martin, the Sigma line, this German company. Unbeknownst to Martin or AMI, I guess, before they sold them the company, the trademark and name had expired. So the St. Louis Music Company picked up the name. The St. Louis Music Company is a very, very big company. As you know, they own Alvarez. You can look them up, Google them. They own a lot of musical companies. They're very big. Not as big as Fender or Gibson, but they're very big. So anyways, they picked up the name Sigma. So what's happened now, and this is just some information in case you run across this, or somebody says to you, hey, I saw this or I saw that. You cannot buy a Sigma guitar in the US. It has to go under the name Kindred. You can buy a Sigma in Europe from the AMI company, but you cannot buy a Sigma in the US because the St. Louis Music Company owns that name. So you can look on Amazon and put in Sigma Acoustic, and you'll see 3 or 4 Sigma come up. I picked up one to try it. It wasn't for me. I don't know exactly who it would be for. It's a very beginner guitar. It's very basic. It's just very basic. It's nothing like the old Sigma guitars were. I think they're just trading on the name. But this AMI, this Kindred guitar, this is the real deal. I mean, this company, they did everything with Martins. They had to repair necks, they had to repair bodies, they had to repair everything. So they knew what the score was, and they're making excellent alternatives to the Martin guitar. I mean, you'd have to check them out. They're pretty impressive. And that's AMI. It's a German company. So when you see it, you'll see them on Reverb sometimes. You can get one of their guitars. But they're sold in the U.S. under the Kindred name. And you know the Martin factory is in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. These guitars are being sold, the Kindred guitars are being sold in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, in a music store. The guy that owns it used to work for Martin. So do the math. There's more to this story, but yeah, it's pretty impressive. So don't get the two of them mixed up. When you see Sigma on Amazon, that is not this German company. No, but you can go to their website. Go to Kindred or Sigma website, and you'll see when you look for dealers, you won't see a dealer in the U.S. It's all because they can't sell that name here, but you can do Kindred here, and they're the identical guitar, just a different name on the headstock. So I just thought that might be of interest to you. I don't know. The last thing I was going to tell you about was Recording King, because Recording King is a very similar style guitar to the Martin, in my opinion. If you may or may not know, Recording King is the name Gibson used. Recording King was a Gibson company. That's the name they used when they made guitars for Montgomery Ward way back in the day. That's what Gibson used, was Recording King. So an American company comes along and now they own Recording King. And they did reverse engineering, which is very common practice with a lot of different products, not just guitars. People do it with everything. Reverse engineering, get a product, buy it, take it apart backwards, and find out how it works, and make it yourself. And that's what they did. And they made guitars a little bit too close to what the Martins were. So as a result, I think Martin made them put a wave in the headstock. That was fine with them. It was different than what Martin looked like, so that was the end of the cease and desist. But they're very good guitars, I think. I have two Recording Kings. Both of mine are clones of like a D18. That's what I refer to them as. Recording King, to introduce their line, made these this model that I have very affordable. It's an RD. There's a A9M and an M9M. One was made for Guitar Center. One was their regular production. I mentioned this before. It's kind of like a lost leader when a grocery store sells something real cheap just to get you in the store to buy something else. That's what Recording King did with those two models I just mentioned. If you can find one, you got yourself a gem. You've got yourself a Recording King RD318 if you can find one of those ones I just mentioned, because they're a keeper and they're excellent guitars. And I think both of mine were no more than $200 each, brand new. They were just a lost leader. Recording King was trying to make a name for themselves, and they did. They were a hit. So that's all I wanted to give you, is just some of that useless information that maybe you can or can't use, and it might be valuable to you, and you might say, Bob, stop talking. So with that said, I'll see you next time. Thank you.